This is Jeremiah. Welcome to New Covenant. We are at the first week of this month, and the first week is gone. As of today, we are 1/3, 1/4 of the way through a 30-day month of 2023, and that would be the ninth month of the year in this calendar. Let's get going as Jeremiah is going to look at Mark 13 and 14 today. We did not go through the entire book of Mark. We're going to wait for that until probably December or January. Because as I mentioned, many of you know, we're really getting into a lot of Bible study here pertaining to hitting the heavy hitters. And for those of you who have been following along, and we've lost a lot of viewers here, but we still have a few viewers left. We still have some students in the classroom. So, and the teacher is here ready to go. So let's go as we look at Mark 13, 14. Then we're going to shut down Mark until probably January, okay? And I have Agape over here. We have Faith ready to go as far as introducing some of these playlists. Now remember, for those of you who are following along, we have about 52 plus categories, okay? That's very easy to remember. There shouldn't be a problem for you. And what we have is a short introduction to each one of these playlists. Now, they will be interdispersed, or they're going to be meshed around in the playlist, but that will be the introduction or the title page, okay? You got that? And you'll become, you will be familiar with them as time goes on. Because 52, we're going to probably use the next 3 months to familiarize you with them. I have first 17, 18 up here now, okay? And we will hammer those home shortly. Right now, I want to get into Mark 13, 14, and as far as all 52 categories that are available for you here on this channel, you can browse those as we develop those channels, those playlists. Playlists are merely categories or subjects, okay? That's all they are. And I will go through the introduction to those playlists on a regular basis. When we go through our Bible, I will refer to those introductions most of the time. Okay, now today we have Mark 13, which goes into the destruction of the Hebrew town there called Jerusalem. And it's going to be destroyed by Titus, 73 or so AD, which is 40 years from the time that the master is speaking these words, okay? Basically, a generation and a lot of people who are watching him carry the cross, they are going to be around during these times. Very uncomfortable times, of course, because they're going to flee the city and they're going to be basically wiped out by the Roman army. There's some sort of upheaval, and they're very angry with the Romans. The Romans are a very tough taskmaster. And that taskmaster fluctuates in his power and his abuse of economics, etc., over the Hebrews, which is at the early part of the 1st century AD, okay? Now let's get into that right now. This is Jeremiah with New Covenant. We greet you in the only name given amongst men by which you must be saved, and every knee will bow, every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord, to the glory of God the Father, as we just rejoice in that name, lifting up our hands unto thy name. The Lord is our shepherd. We don't have any wants here. And if I have a want, it's good. It's good to have a want, as long as it's in the line with the will of the Lord. Let's get going. Let's get going. You say, Jeremiah, you're on fire? That's an understatement. We have Elijah's anointing here as we rejoice in the mercy of God coming to us. And we rejoice in that grace of God being multiplied unto us. Ready? And that brings peace and joy. Now we're going to look at stone buildings, and Jesus said, the disciples said, look at these stones, look at these buildings, and the Master is going to refer to the destruction of this particular city and so forth. And it's bad news for them, and of course we know the reason why, because they are in trouble. And of course the Master is going to speak in multiple time frames. He's going to mention they're running away, and I'm pretty sure that the Lord is mentioning the end of the world. So it's like the end of the world. It's like the end of the world twice for them. In other words, in 72 or so AD, here comes Titus to wipe them out. Then, of course, in a few years from now, they're going to run away again. They're going to get out of town. Because the dragon's going to be kicked out of heaven, and he knows he only has a short time, and he's going to walk into the temple and say he's God, which is the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel, and they're going to split town because they had a 7-year pact of peace with the Arabs and so forth, and in 3.5 years, they lie and they start attacking, and they come and attack. And the one that's on the white horse is obviously the one that's going to lie to them on the first horse of the tribulation period of the apocalypse. So that's the first power that's going to be revealed in the 7 seals of Jesus Christ. So there are basically what? 4 horsemen. Okay, those are the first 4 seals. Right? Then there's martyrdom, the 5th seal. Then there's pre-tribulation, which is the 6th seal, and the 7th seal is the last half of the tribulation period. That's called the Great Tribulation. Okay? This chapter deals with that. It's Mark's interpretation or words pertaining to the 7-year tribulation, and what we might say is thrown in is the time Titus comes to town and he wipes out the city, which basically is 2 times the same kind of thing happens to this city. The first time because they rejected Jesus Christ, and the second time because they rejected Jesus Christ. It's a bad idea to reject Jesus Christ. Don't do it. Okay, that's the point. That's why it's called Jacob's trouble, because trouble comes to you when you reject the Master. In 70-something or so AD, they found out that they shouldn't have rejected Jesus Christ. And that was on a personal level. He called them on a personal, one-on-one level. They want a group deliverance from King David, and it's not going to happen. However, it will happen the second time that they're fleeing town. The Lord will come as David and save them in power. Okay? Messiah ben Joseph, 33 AD. Messiah ben David, 6,007 years after creation. Very simple. Let's get into this and let's look at a few points as to the end of time, and let's go see what's going on here. See these great buildings, take heed that many will deceive you. Obviously, this is not necessarily for the 73 or so AD, because there aren't any false Christs at this time. I don't think there are at this time. So that reference right away, the first reference in the book is to the towns going down, crushed. That's quite plainly Titus is coming to town. There are 2 leaders at this time who are trying to defend the walls of the city, and it's in no go. Down you go. And they're scattered until 1960 or so, when Israel becomes a nation again, and then this generation will not pass, which means a generation is 70 years. So that means 2030 is about as far as this can go mathematically. Okay? Maybe 2030 plus. I don't know. You can't go farther than that. That's simple math. Now, look, that is the first. Now, he's going to talk to Peter, James, and John, and they're going to be told by the Master that take heed lest any man deceive you. He's not talking to them. He's talking about the people that are going to be alive. He's talking to us. And more specifically, he's talking to the Jews who are living in the middle of the tribulation period, in my opinion. Let's move on to, if we look at the end times prophecies, and there are many opinions. I'm quite sure that mine is the sure opinion, but let's move on. Wars and rumors of wars. There you go with the sixth seal. This, to me, this refers to the sixth seal. The Lord breaks 5 seals, which is preparing for the tribulation period. His first 4. 5 is martyrs. That's probably the first half of the tribulation period right in the middle, and that's probably Gentiles who are going to be martyred. Evidently, the Israelites are not going to be bothered for 3.5 years. However, the rest of the world will probably be under the thumb and the hammer of the Vatican and so forth. I don't know exactly what's going to go on, but and that's probably number 5 seal. That is for the 3.5 years of the first 7 years of 7-year tribulation period. Those people are going to be under the altar, and they're going to be looking for vengeance, or somebody get these people who wiped us out and tortured us, etc. Which could also refer to everyone that's been tortured in the history of Christianity and so forth. Okay. And then the 6th seal, to me, is obviously the pre-tribulation, or the first 3.5 years of the tribulation period. Okay? That's 6th seal. 7th seal is the last of everything, which contains 21 events that lead to the Battle of Armageddon, that leads to the 1,000-year reign of Jesus Christ. Okay? And the last 7 things are 7 vials, and that's poured on the very, very wicked people, the real super knuckleheads and the devils, in my opinion. They're very horrible things that are going to happen to people who live on this earth, and of course, devils and demons. Okay? That's a quick look at what's going on here. Now, that's an overview. So we have all of these rumors of wars, which are happening right now, and we have nations rising against nations, which we really have going on all over the place here. Now, we have not had earthquakes, so this is a very interesting situation. Famines and troubles, these are the beginnings of sorrows. So sometimes I wonder if this is something that's going to be led into the first half of the tribulation period and so forth. We'll let that go for now. I do not have a final prophecy lineup for you at this time. I had a prophecy timeline for you, but it's not ready now. I have to review it again. I have to revise it, okay? I will revise it and get more precise with you on this idea of what exactly refers to right before the tribulation period, the first half of the tribulation period, and the second half of the tribulation period. There's only 3 references here. The 4th reference is 73 AD or so, which was the first mention here. The rest of it deals with, in my opinion, pre-trib, early trib, late trib. As to where it falls, it gets a little meshy here, and I'm going to get a little more precise for you on this on the next go round on this chapter, okay? Which also ties in with, of course, Matthew 24, etc., Revelation, okay? Let's get going. Let's get going. So here we have, take heed to yourselves, for they shall deliver you up to the councils and the synagogues, and you shall be beaten, and you shall be brought before rulers and kings for my name's sake, for a testimony against them. Now, what does this deal with? This goes back to the 12 boys here, or the 11 boys, right? 11 men. Well, it can also be applicable to the pre-tribulation period. It can also be given to the entire 7-year period of the tribulation period. It can go all over the place, this chapter right here. Let's continue. Unfortunately, for them it's not good. And we also have a cross-reference to this to Matthew 24, which is also end times scriptures from the Master. And also we have a reference to for a testimony against them, which the Master elucidates by saying that it's a bad idea to bother people who he sent to go out and love and preach forgiveness. The Master gives a quite clear, graphic metaphor for it's a bad idea to hurt people who are going around preaching love. It's the worst thing you can do. And unfortunately, the Muslims have a long history of it, and of course, the Catholics have a long history of it, and both of these organizations are the major individuals who have this testimony against them as a body of people, both of these organizations. Since the 4th century AD, the Pope and their organization, under the Jesuits and so forth, and the entire system that they had there, torture chambers and whatever, and of course the Muslims are big time also attackers of the Christian body and so forth. Okay? These are your two major groups. Now, if you had Hitler and Stalin and Mao Zedong and a few other people, you've got most of your heavy hitters of people who have tortured and murdered the Christian body. And those people, whoever was involved, it was the worst thing they could have ever done. Because that's the testimony against them right there. Now that also ties in with seal number 5, that the master breaks. Which means when he breaks a seal, it is an episode or an epoch in history that he has allowed to take place. Okay? That's all it is. It's very simple. Let's go on to, and the gospel must be published amongst all the nations. We have another reference to this, of course, saying that to the uttermost parts of the earth. Okay? Whoa, to the uttermost parts of the earth. What does that mean? Well, it means that there are uttermost parts. For those of you who are interested in science and physics, the master and everyone in your Bible, they let you know the exact physics of the world. That what you come away with is that the earth is a mesa, and there are uttermost parts, which means there are outer realms to the mesa you live on. Meaning there are ends. Okay? It's very simple, and the grammar is unassailable. Okay? Now, I want to talk about earthquakes for a minute because this is something that I'm going to get into a little bit more specifics with you next time around. All of these things will shake, rattle, and roll. Sorrows will be many. A lot of people are very sad. The master said they're going to be trapped in this 7-year period. The only way out of it is, for most of them, is to be tortured or beheaded, and in order for you to buy or sell. A lot of people are going to turn people in. Family members are going to turn other family members in to the government and to the beast and the harlot and the false prophet and so forth, and they're going to turn you in. Very much like Hitler Youth did, but we won't go into that any further. That requires a little more edification. So we have the cross references here that I gave you. The basic situation here is Babylon and the beast. And you have the great harlot, and you have this organization of the United Nations per se, I don't know exactly, but these organizations, the World Economic Foundation and so forth, they are going to basically be the ones in power, and they're going to take power away from citizens' voting rights and so forth, because there's only one ruler, essentially, okay? And we talk about this persecution, which is here. As I said, relatives are going to turn in other relatives. The Bible mentions that here. And of course, in Luke 21, we have cross-reference to Daniel. You're going to be hated basically by everyone if you're in this period, if you begin to preach Jesus Christ. Okay? Because you're going to have to worship Satan and take the mark of the beast. You just don't take the mark of the beast. Let me mention that to you now. Mention that. There is no mark of the beast without worship, okay? There are millions of people online, or not millions, but there's a lot of people online who don't know their Bible very well, which doesn't mean we're angry with them. It's just that they don't know their Bible very well. It's very clear that you don't take the mark. You take the mark when you worship the devil, okay? The worst thing you can do is to worship the devil, because he's the enemy of God. He's absolutely filthy, he's putrid, and he's absolutely sickening. The things that he does is to all ages of humans and so forth. So he's hated by God, and he's hated by us Christians. We don't really like people who hurt people. We love people. The devil does not love people. So the point is that this is the enemy, and if you worship this filthy sucker, as we say in America, I don't want to use that word, but if you worship this guy, it's over. As my buddy used to say, it's over now. So let's continue. Brother shall betray brother. This is horrible. I don't even watch movies where relatives attack relatives or hurt relatives. To me, it's some of the most sickeningest things. Hollywood did that off and on, because I'm a classic movie fan. I'll probably watch a good classic movie tonight, but what's the point? The point is these movies were family fights family. I don't watch them. I can't stomach it. It is just straight up repugnant for me. Ugh. You know, let me give an example about brother and brother. You know, Hollywood, every now and then they got it right. From 1930 to 1950, Hollywood got it right about 25% of the time. They did a very good job of presenting stories that are very warm, happy stories for you, well acted. Some of them are docudramas and so forth. But about 75 to 60% of their movies are basically bad news. Introducing Catholicism, the worship of Mary, the breaking of the number one commandment, and adultery is okay, and this is where America went south. And it's very unfortunate, because you're accountable for what you do. And that goes for Hollywood too. Now, fortunately, every now and then they would get it right. I think they had a movie about the same year with Miss White, and Miss Davis and Miss Garson. Both of them are very standard, classy women in American history. However, every now and then they would cross the line. And I was very sorry, very sad to see that Miss Garson crossed the line. She's known for being a classy lady up and down the street, and yet she made a movie where it was absolutely sickening. And let me tell you about this. Here's what happened in the story. And you can see this movie, but I suggest you don't do it. It's stomach churning. What happened in the movie was a man who was an artist ran off with his brother's wife. And they ran off, and at the end of the movie, they're smiling as they take off into the sunset. The husband of the woman, the first husband, or first romantic interest, he didn't do anything wrong. He didn't like art that much. And she wanted art or something. And so it was some kind of modern devil introduction into the dishonoring of marriage. And Hollywood just thrust it right in your face. Now, at the same time, Miss Davis made a movie where she ran off with a man, left her husband, and the man who loved her ran off from his fiancée, and he found out that her husband was in the next room. They were both injured in a car accident. He told her, "What the heck are you doing?" And he said, "You're just a bad, you know." And she went back to her husband. Hollywood got it right. They get it right, they get it wrong. They're like a pendulum. In psychology, they call it a quantal sway. 1 minute they're over here, over there, over there, over there. And okay, they got that movie right. That movie's called Dangerous. Okay, they got that one right. Do the right thing around here. And this actress, who was a classy actress, of laughing or smiling, going into the you know, as the camera fades away, and her husband's left there wondering what happened, and we're supposed to say it's fine because he wasn't an artist. He was a stoic person or something. Because he was very stoic, you know. He was very businesslike. And they showed him sad in the movie and so forth. This is absolutely repugnant. And the people who made these movies and so forth, they're not going to get away with that unless they repent of what they did and confess their sins before God. You're not going to get away with it. What if you make 999 good movies and then you make that one movie? You know what you just did? You ruined your whole career. Now, if you repent of that movie, some of these actresses, but the point is that rules are rules. It's the way it goes. Now let's get back to Mark 13. If we went off a little bit, we're talking about rules and why people are in trouble, because this is about trouble here. The word tribulation means trouble. Shake, rattle, and roll. Now, there are going to be a lot of people at this time with a 7-year tribulation period who are going to be drinking over at the bar or taking drugs or who are enjoying violence and kung fu or something, and the earth is shaking. They're not going to care because they're involved in something that they're enjoying, right? Not everybody's going to be shaken. Evidently, a lot of people are still going to be getting married and so forth. But let's let that go because that's quite a broad spectrum of behavior at one time, which I'm going to address later. So we have flee to Petra at the middle of the tribulation period and run to the rocks. That's what Petra means. It's a city near Jerusalem that has big giant rocks. It's a very interesting city, and they're going to go to this place as some sort of refuge from the devil as the abomination of desolation takes place. And that's the middle of the tribulation period, and that's what the Master is going to refer to here, I think. And you shall be hated of all men for my name's sake. That's going to the disciples themselves. And then he says, but he that shall endure unto the end shall be saved. The same shall be saved. Reference to Daniel 12:12. And this is something that is applicable to basically everyone. That's me and you and those who are at the end of time or the beginning of the tribulation period. Doesn't matter. Endurance is required of you. See, that's the point. And the Master is making that's applicable to everyone. That's how you get saved. You endure. Now, let me make a point here. Okay, does that sound like Calvinism to you? Once saved, always saved? That's... Listen, if you come away with Calvinism and you're a C student in grammar, then something's wrong. You flunked the class. That's clearly, you got to hang in there, otherwise you're not saved. It's common sense. Okay? The same shall be saved who endures all the way to the end. Okay? That's why we're Protestants here, and we don't have anything to do with this once saved, always saved thing, which became popular in America in the 60s and 70s. It's very unfortunate. Now, let me explain to you once saved, always saved, since I'm on the subject. Once saved is always saved if you endure to the end. See the point? So once saved, always saved is applicable, but it needs to be qualified. See the point? But when you shall see the abomination of desolation, now we're talking about the middle of the tribulation period. That's quite easy to figure out, okay? Now let him that's on the housetop, this is obviously a reference to the middle of the tribulation period. Now earlier he mentioned something that's also obviously applicable to this same situation. I think when he begins in chapter 13 here, verse 6, I think he's referring to the same period here of the abomination of desolation. That's what I think. However, I'll give you something more precise on that. I'm going to get a little bit more into prophecy later on this year. And next year, I have a prophecy lesson for you. I'm going to go through this chapter here. But I'm going to make it precise. I'm not going to dance around. Okay? For in those days shall be affliction, such as was not from the beginning of creation, which God created unto this time, neither shall be. So there's a lot of affliction going on here. Affliction means pain. This could easily refer to being beheaded. Now, I think this is the middle of a tribulation period, and I think it's when the devil ratchets up his persecution of mankind who don't want to take the mark of the beast. And of course the Israelites are not going to take the mark of the beast because they'll never worship anybody because they worship God and they know to worship God and Him alone. They just don't want to worship Jesus Christ. That's why they're in the mess they're in. It's called Jacob's trouble. And of course we mentioned here a dozen times, why is Jacob in trouble? Because he didn't kneel before the Son of the living God. That's why they're hanging out with Muslims a little bit, because neither one of them wants to come to Jesus Christ. Now, they're probably the Muslim persecutors, which may join the Catholic synagogue of Satan, which is really what it is. But the Bible's going to say some people that are in the synagogue of Satan of Catholicism, you can get out. In other words, you're not worshiping Mary, you're not doing the freaky things that are involved in this church, and you're really seeking after God, then you can get out of there. Flee Babylon, which is the same thing as confusion, which is the same thing as heresy, which Paul tells Timothy, withdraw thyself. Some people go to these TV preachers or whatever. Paul says to get your can out of there. Because there's no such thing as godliness brings you gain. Gain is not from being godly. That's a lie. There's no guaranteed gain from coming to God. It's nonsense. Paul calls it fairy tales. Let's get back to the lesson here. Jermaine. So now we have extreme persecution that is going to be a lot. It's going to be obviously very bloody in many ways. We won't go into details here. This is an all ages ministry here. We very seldom get into any details pertaining to anything that has any horror in it at all. And furthermore, I've decided to focus on staying away from a lot of bad people and punishment for about 2 years now. In January, I have plans to get into more prophecy here, where we get into a little bit more grody to the max, as they say in Valley Talk in California, grody to the max. We're going to get into a little bit of that. However, I'm going to be careful, and I'll probably make those available only for adults. I don't discuss gross things for the general population. I had one or two videos that talked about the Jesuit vow and the Quran, and we have to kind of be careful with those two overviews of those two books. They're two of the most grossest, sickest books you could ever want to read. For those of you who are familiar with those two documents. And that's why these two organizations are good friends, because hell is united. The Master said the devil's not divided against himself. Okay? No way. That's why the Pope was holding up the Quran here the other day. He knows what's in there. They just made a new building there that looks like a snake head. Okay, what more information do you need? Okay, let's continue. For false Christs and false prophets. So we're probably dealing with this in a chronological system here of the Lord talking about the middle of the tribulation period. And the devil is angry because he just got kicked out of heaven. Michael and the boys kick him out of heaven because he likes to hang out up in heaven periodically. And he was hanging out at this time, evidently. And he got booted out. Which means he's probably about 12,000 miles above Earth. And he got booted. I would say heaven is 12,000 to 24,000 miles right on top of your head, and you can't argue with that science. I don't care who you are.